First thing I'm going to talk about is a study done by Thomas Ward. He had people draw aliens. He said, make up I forget his exact term, might have been living thing or a creature or something like that. And the finding was relatively shocking. People are not very creative. Okay, so this is kind of typical of what people did. Now, why is this considered not particularly creative? If you think of the vast space of things that living things could be in, this looks relatively humanoid. I mean, it looks a lot like an earth creature. It's got fur, it's got 2 legs, it's bilaterally symmetric, it's got nose, eyes, ears, all in recognizable places. Okay, this is an image from the actual study. Some participant actually came up with this drawing, and they had these independent raters rate them on how creative they thought they were. Some of them were very creative, like some giant amoeboid thing that had 19 tentacles or something. But most were like they had a person, they put a chicken head on top. Okay, not very creative. So here we have, they're highly structured, is what he said, with characteristic properties of common Earth species. Even when they're asked to use their wildest imaginations, and even when the subjects were creative writers. So this cast kind of a depressing glow upon the creativity research. In my lab, with a cognitive science honors student, and Mike Vertoli, who's in the back, also helped with the study, we thought, well, come on. You just put some random undergrad taking a psychology course in front of a blank piece of paper and ask them to be creative with drawing an alien. Maybe that's asking too much, right? So this is from the Spore Creature Creator. Have you guys ever heard of Spore? Spore's a game came out a couple years ago, and you can download this creature creator, I think free, and what it does is it allows you to build creatures. Here's some of the creatures that can be built with Spore. You start with this ball, and then you can pick these are mouths or something, and you just you have these drop-down menus, and it'll add it in a smart way, and you end up with a creature that can roar and walk around and that kind of thing. So we thought maybe if you give people inspiration, you show them the vast possibility of what creatures could be, maybe they'll be more creative. Anybody have a guess what happened? Nobody wants to guess? There are 2 choices. They were creative or they weren't. Yeah? Yes, they weren't. It's amazing we got this published because usually they don't publish stuff like that. If you find that there's no difference, they usually don't care. But what we did was we changed our hypothesis to say, you know what? This non-creativity is stable across technologies. It works with pencil and it works with computer technology. Now that might sound like cheating to you. Well, welcome to science. It's not really cheating. The purpose of the hypothesis in science is to help describe something in a way that is going to communicate the important findings. And it doesn't really matter if that was your hypothesis when you decided to think of the study. You may politely disagree, but this is the only way this stuff was going to get out. This is not quite out yet. That's what we found. So, can we get people to be more creative? This is an experiment that was done fairly recently that I thought was very exciting. What they did was they had a catalog of candles, like a shopping catalog of candles, and they asked people to find out all of the attributes on which these candles varied. Okay? So the color change, different candles have different colors, they have different heights, they have different scents, those kinds of things. And they came up with 32 categories. Okay? This graph here is a measure of how often that category varies. So color changes all the time, right? Candles, there are a million different colors for candles. You can get all kinds of. The width of the candle is variable. Think about when you look at the shelf of candles in the store, how they vary. Okay, what ways do they not vary? Okay, well, one of them was motion. Candles rarely move. What they did was they gave people this bar chart here, and they said, try to come up with a new candle, but try to use attributes that are rarely manipulated in real life. So people are, okay, well, the color, people change color all the time, I'll ignore that. What's this motion? How do you make? So what someone did was they came up with a candle that was on a lever, a teeter-totter thing, and when it was heavy, it would be here, and you light it, and then as it burns, the counterweight over here makes it rise, and there was a snuffer up here, so it would snuff itself out by the time it got to the end. And independent raters thought, yes, that's a very creative solution. So it looks like there's this evidence here that this method actually can help make people make more creative decisions. Now, why are these feature types numbers? Why don't we list, like, let's say this is color? We don't know, because this is proprietary. So these people, they published this, but they didn't say what the categories were. Okay? They wanted to make a company. So you could reproduce the study and find out what they were, but they didn't report those things. So I thought, well, this is really cool. This is exciting. Maybe we can do it with monsters. So this is a study I'm doing right now with another cognitive science honors student. And what we did was we took, she mainly took a book. She went through a book of monsters. I think we got like a Star Wars role-playing game book of alien creatures or something. And she found all the ways that those creatures varied. Now, this is just a little bit of it. It's actually 8 pages long. Monsters are much more complex than candles. Okay? So here we have appendages. So number of wings, number of tentacles, has arms or legs, has antenna, different size differences. They might not be symmetrical. Are they boneless? Are they powerful? Are they vestigial, leathery? And here's the behavior of those appendages. Aids with climbing, used in leaping, can regenerate, functions both as a limb and a sensory organ. Okay? Lots and lots of stuff. And what her project is first part was to make this. And the second part was to give this checklist to some independent raters. She found a role-playing game group playing Dungeons and Dragons, and she got them to look at a bunch of monsters and fill out check marks for each monster. So let's say you got like a goblin or something. You'd figure out what kind of it can grasp. I don't know what a goblin can do, but they would just check it off. And what we can do is when we give this to enough people, we can make our own bar graph. Remember this bar graph here? We can make one of these, but not just for the 32 categories of candles, but for the hundreds of categories that we have for creatures. And the second part of the experiment, which we haven't done yet, it'll be done this year, is that we will give this checklist to people and see if they can make more creative creatures. We're going to have 3 groups, actually. We're going to have a group that was like the Ward study. We just give them a piece of paper and say, try to come up with a creative creature. We're going to have a condition where we just give them the checklist without the bar graph. We'll say, here's some ideas. That's a little bit like the Spore creature creator, where we don't say which ones are normally used. And then we'll have another one where we give them the actual bar graph. So we predict that it'll get more creative as we go through those 3. So if you contact me, probably by fall of next year, it should be all done and we'll know whether it worked. Fingers crossed. It could be pretty exciting. But I think this is a really, it worked with the candles, and we're hoping it'll work here. But I think that if you're interested in your own personal creativity, one way to help inspire it in yourself is to try to think of what things are rarely changed when you're trying to think of some kind of new solution, right? Another thing about creativity is that most of your ideas are bad, but you should not resist thinking of them. When you are trying to come up with a solution to a problem or trying to be creative in any kind of way, it is very important to separate the generation of ideas from the evaluation of those ideas.